Thank you, Brother Ralph and brethren. Indeed, it certainly has been a tremendous blessing, both yesterday and today so far, and very thankful that the Lord has provided this time for us all. Well, brethren, I have received a number of good and interesting questions, and I know that sometimes when you receive a question and try to give an answer to it, you're not always sure that the answer you're giving is perhaps what the questioner was looking for. So please forgive me if I might not give the questioner the answer that maybe the slant that he or she was looking for, but I'll try to do my best on this, and with the Lord's help, hopefully give some helpful thoughts along the lines of the questions. And so the first question, it's actually a series of questions, and it reads such as this. One of our Lord's works during his second presence is to destroy Christendom and to replace it with the millennial kingdom. What is meant by Christendom? What is meant by papacy? What is meant by the church systems? What is meant by the Western so-called Christian world? And what about the Eastern nations? Well, the first one, what is meant by Christendom? Well, the term Christendom literally implies the thought of a kingdom. That's really in the word, dumb, Christendom. In other words, the kingdom of Christ. So it gives the literal thought of a combination of both political and religious powers. Now, this was actually accomplished during the Dark Ages among many of the European nations, where there was not a separation of church and state, but a combination of church and state. And the church was really reigning, you might say, over the state in many cases. Now, the word Christendom is generally understood today as referring to all those in the world who adhere to the Christian faith, or we could say to those nations in the world in which Christianity is the dominating religion. However, as we heard this morning with Brother John Scales' discourse, with the destruction of the divine right of kings, clergy, and aristocracy in World War I would say there are probably very few that would believe or that would claim that there are any Christian nations at the present time. Of course, we recognize that our Lord never authorized nor recognized any earthly nations as his kingdom. The only nation that he recognized was really, you could say, the church. But of course, they were not to exercise political power in the world. So the term Christendom is really a misnomer. It's misnamed, and there never was intended to be. It was something that Satan began and used, especially during the Dark Ages. Again, those 1260 years in particular, between 539 and 1799, to rule over the nations. What is meant by the papacy? Well, the papacy is technically the Roman Catholic hierarchy, the popes, the cardinals, the archbishops, and the bishops. And the papacy is always referred to in the Bible as either a man, as a beast, and as the Antichrist. Now, the Roman Catholic Church, on the other hand, is separate from the papacy. It's really a church denomination, like the Presbyterian Church or like the Lutheran Church. And it's referred to in the Bible always as a woman. And that is and has been ruled over by the papacy. And so we have to distinguish between the papacy and the Roman Catholic Church. Of course, we have to keep in mind that we're always referring to systems. We're not ever referring to individuals. There may very well have been some consecrated Christians that even held some of these high positions in the Roman Catholic hierarchy. So we're referring to systems and not individuals. Now, what is meant by the church systems? Well, I'm assuming the questioner may be referring to the various Protestant denominations. And of course, the various Protestant church denominations are referred to in the Bible as the daughters of the Roman Catholic Church. So we often times refer to, and this is referred to in the writings as Babylon, the mother and daughters. And so we actually see that really, in ancient Babylon, the first universal empire, there was the nation of Babylon, or the empire of Babylon, but then there was also the city of Babylon, which was the capital of the country or nation of Babylon. And so we can distinguish that as well, because the city of ancient Babylon pictures really the actually all religious systems and denominations, whereas the country of Babylon not only includes the religious systems, but also includes the political, the financial and social systems as well. So again, we see a distinguishing characteristic here. What is meant by the Western so-called Christian world? Well, I'm glad that the questioner put the Western so-called Christian world, because indeed the Western world, or the Western nations that are considered the Western world, really aren't Christian as well. We know that even amongst, of course, the Christian world, or those who claim to be Christians, the vast majority we could call as nominal, in the sense that in name only. Very few, we would say, true Christians. But generally, especially in the political world, I think the Western nations oftentimes are referred to as the United States, the European nations, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and others, and often have been referred to as Christian nations, which of course we recognize are not actually Christian nations. What about the Eastern nations? Well, this is a little bit hard to define, I think. You tend to think of the nations or countries of Asia. Oftentimes you think of the Eastern countries of Europe could be considered that. I actually looked this up online, and there's no clear definition of what nations are considered the Eastern nations. Now, in the past, those nations tend to be regarded as the heathen nations, because they tended to be dominated by religions that were non-Christian in nature. Mohammedanism and all of those, what typically have been considered non-Christian or heathen nations. Of course, I think that's blurred somewhat today and is not regarded as such. You look at China, for instance. If you look at how sophisticated the nation of China has become, certainly we can't think of it as a third world country in the sense of how advanced really they have become. Second question, and again, it's a series of questions here. Regarding having children in God's kingdom, does Matthew 22, verse 30 apply to all classes? Please also consider Luke 20, 34 to 36. And second, do the following texts indicate that there will be children in God's kingdom? Jeremiah 32, 39, and their children after them is referred to in that verse. Jeremiah 33:22, Jeremiah 3:16, Ezekiel 36:10 and 37, and Isaiah 60, verse 22. Again, regarding having children in God's kingdom, does Matthew 22:30 apply to all classes? And please also consider Luke 20:34 to 36. Well, let's turn to Matthew 22, verse 30. And that reads, "For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven." And then let us turn to Luke chapter 20, verses 34 to 36, which is somewhat of a parallel set of scriptures here. All right. Again, starting with verse 34, "And Jesus answering said unto them, The children of this world marry and are given in marriage, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world and the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage, neither can they die any more, for they are equal unto the angels and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection." So with these verses, I do not believe that these passages really address the matter of having children in God's kingdom, or whether there will be children in God's kingdom. I'll have more on that in just a moment here. But do the following texts indicate that there will be children in God's kingdom? And that's again Jeremiah 32:39, and their children after them, Jeremiah 33:22, Jeremiah 3:16, Ezekiel 36:10 and 37, and Isaiah 60, verse 22. I'm not going to read these scriptures. I did look them up, and these scriptures really, in many cases, are symbolic and refer to like the children of the kingdom, and that the people will be multiplied. Now, you can't find a lot on them, but I would have to say what they seem to indicate to me is, again, that they don't really address the fact of being having children in the kingdom, but that referring to the children of the Christ class, that certainly that the children of restitution will indeed become great in number eventually. Now, I would have to say this as far as the fact of children in the kingdom. I believe there will be literal children in the kingdom. It has been estimated that over half of the world's population has died in childhood or younger. And I do not believe that they will come back as adults. So I do, and the thought has been expressed in the past by various brothers and pastors that we've had, that there'll be many children that will come back in the resurrection, and they will all need to be brought up by someone. Now, there'll be probably even some children of those that are spirit beings right now that will need parenting. So yes, I would say that there will be children in the kingdom. But then I'd like to go a little further yet and take up this matter of bearing children in the kingdom. And I basically would like to read a question and answer, and this is on the Epiphany Truth Examiner, our second website that deals with primarily material, primarily directed toward Epiphany Bible students. And the title of this question, millennium, will childbirths continue? And the question, will childbirths continue during the millennial age? And I'd like to read the 4 paragraphs here, and it's all from Brother Russell's writings. And it says, in the question book, that is Pastor Russell's question book, page 205, the question is asked, will there be births after the time of trouble? And it is answered as follows. And this is Pastor Russell. I understand that things will go on in a natural way. First of all, those under the new covenant arrangement, after they begin to line up, will have higher aspirations and nobler qualities of mind, and births will be fewer and fewer, so that at the end of the millennial age, births will entirely cease, and there will gradually be a change in the human family, corresponding to the change in the beginning, only in the opposite way, when God separated Mother Eve from Adam's side. Our understanding is that the whole human family will be as Adam was before the separation. It will not mean that the sisters will be blotted out, but that they will take on the other qualities, and men will take on the more gentle qualities. The perfect life will represent the gentle qualities as well as the stronger qualities, so that both men and women in the millennial age will be perfect as Adam was before Eve was brought forth. Page 462 of the same book testifies similarly. Note also this statement from page 426. In all probability, the cutting off of the matter of human families will be a gradual one and not an instantaneous one. For some time, there may be sexual lines, but this condition of things will gradually be eliminated as they attain nearer to the perfection in which there will be neither marrying nor giving in marriage. Also in reprints 3461, paragraphs 9 and 11, this is the Watchtower reprints, it is stated, as respects those who at the close of the millennial age and who have demonstrated their obedience to the Lord and who shall be accounted worthy of that perfect state and to be made perfect themselves, lifted clear out of death, such will neither marry nor be given in marriage. The Lord does not say what will be the intermediate conditions during the millennial age, and this leaves us to infer that mankind and womankind, being awakened from the tomb in precisely the same conditions in which they went into it, will possess the same sex distinctions as at the present time. What will be the regulations of that time, we are not told, but we have confidence in the Lord that he will be abundantly able to direct the course of mankind wisely for their benefit, instruction, and uplift. And then the final paragraph, again, Pastor Russell, it will be remembered that during the first 1,000 years after the fall, not only was life much longer than at present, but births were much less frequent than now. And so we presume that during the millennial age, the propagation of the species will gradually diminish until toward its close, it will finally stop, mankind gradually losing the sex functions. Sex will no longer be necessary, for man will no longer be alone as he was at first to need a companion, for the whole earth will then be filled with perfect beings, and all the wicked, the incorrigible, will be destroyed. It is to this we understand that our Lord referred, saying, neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels and are as the children of God, being children of the resurrection. As the angels do not die, neither will the perfect human beings die. Now, Brother Adam Urban spoke about this somewhat yesterday too, along the lines of course, the resurrection. And of course, really, there is a difference, as was indicated, between the awakening and resurrection. Their awakening, all will be awakened in an instant in due time, but the resurrection will not be complete in anyone or the entire race until they are brought up to the state of perfection. So I hope that this answers us. I guess we really don't have a lot of evidence from the scriptures, but I think Brother Russell's thoughts along this line are very good. Next question, number 3, Luke 23, 39 to 43. The two thieves on the cross. We know the meaning of the word today, but what is the meaning of paradise? When the thief asked Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom, did Jesus promise him a resurrection or life everlasting in paradise? Again, Luke 23, 39 to 43, the two thieves on the cross. We know the meaning of the word today, but what is the meaning of paradise? Well, I think what we need to do here is let's turn to Luke 23. And read these verses 39 to 43. And one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, Does not thou fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. Well, dear brethren, the word paradise signifies a garden. If we look in Strong's, we find the proof of that word for paradise does signify a garden. And so we could say that the word paradise can mean the Garden of Eden. It can mean heaven, the abode of God, or it can mean the paradise of the kingdom, which Jesus will reestablish when the earthly phase of the kingdom begins, when the earth will gradually become a paradise or paradise restored. Now, Jesus could not have meant the Garden of Eden because that was already past. There was no more Garden of Eden. He couldn't have meant heaven because certainly the thief would not be worthy of being raised and brought to heaven. So Jesus had to have been referring to that future paradise of the kingdom during the earthly phase of the kingdom, when the earth will gradually become a paradise like the Garden of Eden was by the end of that 1,000 years. And so that I would say that would be what the paradise refers to here in this particular verse. Now, then the next question, when the thief asked Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom, did Jesus promise him a resurrection or a life everlasting in paradise? My answer would be no, but he will have the opportunity to walk up the highway of holiness. And he will have the opportunity to attain resurrection of the perfect human life. Again, Brother Adam mentioned that word anastasis, which means a full standing up, a full perfection, a full resurrection, which will be attained for each individual as they attain human perfection, and for the entire race by the end of the millennial age. And this thief will, if he reaches that full resurrection, will then have the opportunity to be tested in the little season. And eventually, if he passes the tests in the little season, will be given everlasting life in the ages of glory. And so not only will that thief be there, but Everyone else on that day, the Roman soldiers, Pilate, all of these that were on the scene at that time will be in that kingdom of God, that paradise, and will have the opportunity to walk up the highway of holiness. It's not a guarantee they will have to cooperate with God. They will have to be faithful and obedient if they wish to go up, attain human perfection, and eventually gain eternal life. Next question. If Jesus sacrificed his perfect human life, right to life, and life rights, how can they be made available to Father Adam and the entire human family in Adam? If Jesus sacrificed his perfect human life, right to life, and life rights, how can they be made available to Father Adam and the entire human family in Adam? Well, this is getting at the philosophy of the ransom. And what I would answer in here is that Jesus, and I agree, did sacrifice his perfect human life, right to life, and life rights, but he did not forfeit them. Now, sometimes when we speak about sacrificing something, we may get the thought that it means forfeiting. And we would say that if Jesus had sinned, he would have forfeited those three things: perfect human life, the right to life, and perfect life rights. And then they could not have been eventually made available to Father Adam and the human family. But we know that Jesus did not sin. He died a perfect human being. He did not forfeit his perfect humanity. Now, we all recall that Jesus, at 30 years of age, at his baptism at Jordan, really consecrated his life to God, and he became a spirit-begotten new creature. We could refer to him at that time and the 3.5 years after that as a dual being. He was a perfect human being, but he was also a spirit-begotten new creature. Now, Jesus died on Calvary's cross and was resurrected, not a human being, as some teach, but he was resurrected a divine spirit being. Now, when he was raised a divine spirit being, because he died a perfect human being, he still possessed the right to human life. But he did not need that right to human life for himself because he was already a spirit being. So in due time, in harmony with the Heavenly Father's will, Jesus will apply that perfect human life, right to life, and life rights for Father Adam, who himself, Father Adam, forfeited his perfect human life, right to life, and life rights through sin. And the whole human family, because we were all born as descendants of Adam, we've all inherited sin from him. Because of the ransom sacrifice directly for Adam, we will all be recipients indirectly of that perfect human life, right to life, and life rights of Jesus. And so the divine plan is, and the wisdom of God is so beautiful in that Jesus will use that human life in its all of its rights, because he does not need them for himself, for Adam and for the race in Adam. And this is also a proof, dear brethren, that as Jehovah's Witnesses teach that Adam went into the second death, well, the fact of the matter is that the ransom sacrifice was made for Adam, and if he will not come back in the resurrection morning, we cannot either, because we are all descendants of Father Adam. And this is a proof that Adam will come back. Now, that doesn't mean that Adam will come back first. No, he may be the last one to come back. but that's an absolute guarantee that Adam will come back in the day of the resurrection. Please explain Psalm 75, 6 and 7. Well, this is, of course, our text for today. And let's read it again, Psalm 75, 6 and 7. Promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. Well, I think as this question was pondered yesterday, I believe that Brother Dominic pretty much answered the question himself, because God is often represented in the scriptures as abiding in the north, not the east, not the west, not the south. And so the thought is that it is God who symbolically is pictured as in the north, is the one who promotes, and we could also say the one who demotes as well. And so if we want to speak about this, that let's say in a class of Bible students, most classes have elections for elders and deacons and so forth. And so the brethren vote as they believe is God's will, who should be the elders and the deacons and deaconesses and so forth. And it is actually God who really directs these promotions or demotions in some cases. So let's say that an elder has been an elder, and yet at some election he's not elected an elder anymore. What should his attitude be then? Well, his attitude should be, well, this is perhaps from the Lord, unless the class made a mistake, but take it as from the Lord. Perhaps there's some lesson that needs to be learned along this line. Perhaps there needs to be some improvement made to become more qualified as an elder or a deacon or a deaconess, for instance. Now, this can also refer to the church as a whole, of course. Who is it that promoted our Lord and his church, the little flock? It was the Heavenly Father that promoted them to the divine nature. And certainly, who got demoted? Well, certainly the greatest example of demotion would be that of Satan, who was certainly, as Brother Ralph indicated, a cherub. Many have given a thought perhaps he was the highest of all of the angels, next to our Lord Jesus himself, the great archangel. And so what a tremendous fall from grace was that of Satan. And so that it is God alone who has the right and the authority to either promote or demote. Next question, what are the two immutable things mentioned in Hebrews 6, verse 18? What are the two immutable things mentioned in Hebrews 6, verse 18? Well, let us read that passage. And it reads that by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie, we might have strong consolation, who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us. Well, those two immutable things would be God's word and God's oath. Now, we, in fact, have been studying about this in Genesis chapter 12. God gave that Abrahamic covenant to Abraham in its 7 different parts. Really, it was 7 different and distinct promises that he would make of him, for instance, a great nation and so forth. Now, of course, we know as well that he then in Genesis chapter 22 reiterated that first promise of the Abrahamic covenant, thou wilt make of him a great nation, with an oath. And why did God give an oath onto the promises he already gave in the Abrahamic covenant? Well, God wanted to make sure that the human family, those of us will have complete and utter faith in God and in his oath. And so, although it was not necessary for him to give an oath, he did that for our sake, so that we could not only have his promise, his word, but may also have the oath. And so we know that those promises, both the Abrahamic covenant and the oath-bound covenant, are unchangeable and will be absolutely fulfilled in God's own due time and own due way. And we, as consecrated brethren, we fall under the certain fleshly features of the oath-bound covenant, whether we are a youthful worthy candidate or a consecrated epiphany camper candidate. We are under the various fleshly features of that oath-bound covenant, and we can take the promises of the oath-bound covenant onto ourselves. And we have God's word and his oath that verifies this. Next one, 7. Can we expect any new truth before the earthly phase of God's kingdom is set up? Can we expect any new truth before the earthly phase of God's kingdom is set up? I know I have heard the thought some have expressed that since the passing of Brother Jolly, who we believe to be the last great company member, the last Spirit begotten member, that we cannot expect any new truth to take place before the kingdom. Well, let's see, that was 43 years ago that Brother Jolly passed away. And I would disagree with that. And I would like to read just 2 of many that could be quoted here. So the first one is Proverbs 4, verse 18. Proverbs 4, verse 18. But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more onto the perfect day. Now, Brother Russell indicated that this not only has an individual application to the individual Christian, that we continue to develop our characters eventually onto perfection, but that it has an application to the Lord's consecrated people as a whole, so that there never will be a time in which the truth will not continue to advance. Matthew 13:52, and I believe it was in conference with Brother Hedman, and I asked him this very question, and he referred to Matthew 13:52, and this reads, "Then saith he unto them," Jesus is speaking here, "Therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which bringeth forth out of his treasure things new and old." So the fact of the matter is that there would always be those scribes instructed unto the kingdom that would bring forth unto us those things from his word, from God's word, both new and old. And I think of the cloudy, fiery pillar. Certainly, we have the cloudy pillar during the day and the fiery pillar during the night that led the Israelites. And indeed, that pictures also the truth as do and its spirit, that the truth and its spirit continue to advance onto the perfect day, onto the kingdom. And so we can expect that this will continue. And I would say, how is this? What new truths have there been that have come out since Brother Jolly died? Well, I think we can all see that if you look at secular truth, how much truth has come out in the secular realm. And can we not expect that in the spiritual realm there would be the same thing? Have we not been able to see how world events have corroborated much of what Brother Johnson or Brother Russell, Johnson, and Jolly have given to us? It was 10 years after Brother Jolly's death in 1989, the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's just one example, but I think we can see how the kingdoms and the democracies are melting like wax. And so we have actually a better view of the trend of events in our day than Brother Jolly had in his day. And so, indeed, I think we can say that we can expect that we need to walk with the light, lest the light pass us by. And so, yes, I believe the Lord will, in his own due time and way, reveal unto us whatever truth we need at the time. And I think as we see in the future, will not be kept or caught off guard along the lines of him guiding us into the kingdom. And then finally, please explain Zephaniah 2, verse 3. Zephaniah 2, verse 3, and it reads, "Seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger." Well, brethren, this particular passage of Scripture is very comforting to us. And it is not only given to the Lord's people, but it's really given to the world in general too, that all should seek the Lord. All should seek to be meek, should seek righteousness, because just the seeking of these things will enable us to pass through the time of trouble. The most severe stage of it is yet future. We've heard about some of that, the most severe stage being world revolution, world anarchy, and eventually Jacob's trouble, phase 2. And the Lord has not promised that all will be hid, but if you look in history, how many of the Lord's saints were miraculously hid, literally, amidst invading armies and so forth. And so the Lord could possibly miraculously cover us. It doesn't necessarily mean cover us in death. Yes, many of us may go into death before the kingdom opens up, but he could deliver us. He could miraculously hide us in the day of the trouble, like the 3 Hebrew youths that were put into the fiery furnace, and how the Lord protected them through that. And so the Lord is very capable of protecting us during the time of trouble, literally, if that is his will for us. And in some cases, he may choose not to deliver us in that way. He may hide us in death. So I think it has many different thoughts and meanings that could be applied to this, but all of them, I believe, should be of comfort to us as we go and approach deeper and deeper into the time of trouble, onto the great climax of the time of trouble before the kingdom comes. So, dear brethren, I hope these thoughts have been helpful, and that is the last question, and I turn the meeting back over to Brother Ralph.